In this podcast episode, Dillon Danis discusses various topics including his upcoming fight with Logan Paul, a lawsuit involving Nina Agdal, and his training with Conor McGregor. Danis starts off by talking about his fight with Logan Paul and expresses his confidence in winning the fight. He believes that he has more ways to win than Logan and mentions that he is a tough and resilient fighter. He also mentions that he is not afraid to take hits in order to get inside and deliver powerful punches. The conversation then shifts to the lawsuit involving Nina Agdal. Danis explains that he had a disagreement with Agdal and made some comments about her on social media. He mentions that he does not have a problem with her personally, but rather with Logan Paul. He believes that Logan is a bad person and accuses him of being egotistical and cutting people off from his crew. The podcast hosts question Danis about his training and preparation for the fight. He mentions that he trains by himself and shadowboxes in front of a mirror. He also talks about his physical shape and mentions that he is in better shape now compared to when he was homeless. The hosts express their surprise at his transformation and comment on his muscular physique. The conversation then takes a humorous turn as the hosts and Danis engage in playful banter and jokingly challenge each other to a fight. They talk about their physical attributes and make jokes about each other's appearances. Danis mentions that he is a fan of choking during sex and the hosts joke about his preferences. The podcast then briefly touches on Danis' altercation with a bouncer at a bar. He explains that he was at a wedding and got into a fight with the bouncer after being denied entry. He mentions that he was on crutches at the time due to a knee surgery and describes the altercation with the bouncer and the subsequent arrest by the police. Danis goes on to discuss his reputation and how he is perceived by the public. He mentions that he is a real person and does not change his personality for the sake of public opinion. He believes that people support him because he is genuine and can take jokes and criticism. Danis continues by talking about Logan Paul's boxing skills and his ability to talk trash. He mentions that Logan is a good talker and compares him to KSI in his prime. However, Danis also expresses doubt about Logan's ability to perform under pressure, suggesting that he might shoot his pants on camera. He clarifies that he writes all his own material and does not have anyone writing for him. The conversation then shifts to the upcoming fight between Danis and Alex Pata, also known as Alex P. Danis reveals that he will be fighting at 195 pounds, as he is a 170-pound fighter. He mentions that the sparring sessions with Alex were intense and that Alex did not take it easy on him. Danis also talks about their previous training sessions involving jiu-jitsu and how he helped Alex prepare for his fight against Yen. The discussion then turns to the topic of loyalty, with Danis expressing his loyalty towards Conor McGregor. He mentions that he has always had Conor's back and will never say a bad word about him, regardless of their current relationship. Danis also talks about how Conor defended him during his recent controversies, even though it could have put Conor in a position to be criticized. The conversation then delves into the fight between Danis and Logan Paul. Danis expresses his desire to win the fight and mentions that he wants to make all the money from it. He also talks about the potential for future fights and mentions that he is interested in joining the UFC and becoming a champion in the welterweight division. Danis also discusses his experience with Bellator and his desire to fight in the UFC. He mentions that he is currently signed with PFL and that they have some crazy money behind them. He talks about the possibility of getting bought out of his contract and signing with the UFC. The conversation then shifts to the topic of trash talking in jiu-jitsu. Danis reveals that he used to get suspended from Marcelo Garcia's gym for trash talking. He explains that jiu-jitsu culture emphasizes respect for opponents, which is why trash talking is not widely accepted. However, he mentions that he has always been outspoken and that it has gotten him into trouble in the past. Danis also talks about his idol, Leandro Lo, who was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter. He describes Leandro as the best ever and talks about his incredible skills and competitiveness. He mentions that he had the opportunity to train with Leandro and that he was in awe of his abilities. The conversation continues with Danis discussing his mindset and goals for the future. He expresses his desire to continue fighting and to become a champion in the UFC. He also talks about the importance of loyalty and the impact it has had on his life. Danis opens up about his struggles with alcoholism and how it affected his life. He talks about how he used to party excessively and engage in reckless behavior. He mentions that he hit rock bottom and almost died, which led him to reevaluate his life and make changes. He has been sober for 8 months and acknowledges that he still deals with the temptation to drink. The topic of legacy comes up, and Danis shares that winning his first brown belt world championship in jiu-jitsu was one of his proudest moments. He describes the feeling of fulfillment and pride that comes with achieving such a significant accomplishment. He also mentions the support and pride he felt from his mother and his former best friend, Marcelo Garcia, who was like a father figure to him. Danis reflects on his relationship with Marcelo Garcia and how it changed over time. He shares a story about getting suspended from the gym for expressing admiration for the Diaz brothers, which went against Marcelo's jiu-jitsu code. He explains that Marcelo was trying to instill discipline and character in him, but their relationship became strained when Danis started looking up to Conor McGregor and learning about marketing and entertainment. The conversation takes a more emotional turn as Danis discusses the loss of his father and his former best friend. He expresses his disappointment that his former best friend did not reach out or attend his father's funeral, which hurt him deeply. He acknowledges that he would be open to reconciling with his former best friend if he apologized and showed genuine remorse. Danis talks about the impact of fatherhood on his life and how it has changed his perspective. He mentions the joy he feels when spending time with his son and how it has made him more aware of his actions and the legacy he wants to leave behind. He also discusses the importance of being there for his son and providing a positive role model. The conversation continues with Danis discussing his belief in God and how his experiences have rekindled his faith. He mentions that he feels someone is looking after him and that he shouldn't be alive considering the things he has been through. He also talks about his plans to drink again in the future but emphasizes that he wants to control it and not let it consume him. Danis continues by talking about the difficulty of transitioning from a fighter's mindset to a normal person's mindset. He explains that fighters are like animals, constantly in a primal state, and it can be challenging for them to switch back to being a regular person. He mentions fighters like Mike Tyson and Conor McGregor, who have struggled with controlling their primal instincts after their fighting careers. The conversation then shifts to Danis's admiration for The Rock and his love for wrestling. He talks about growing up during the Attitude Era and being a fan of wrestlers like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. He recalls arguing with his friends about whether wrestling was real or fake and how he eventually stopped watching when he found out it was scripted. However, he still has a deep appreciation for the entertainment value of wrestling. Danis also discusses his friendship with The Rock and how he admires him as a person. He mentions that The Rock is one of the nicest celebrities he has ever met and appreciates how he takes the time to connect with people and help upcoming fighters. The topic of conversation then shifts to Danis's appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast. He talks about how he was supposed to fly to Vegas to do a show with Rogan but had to decline due to the short notice. He also mentions that he has a lot of respect for Rogan and considers him a friend. Danis then discusses his admiration for Drake and how he met him. He describes Drake as a brilliant and nice person and appreciates how he took the time to connect with him and offer his support. The conversation then takes a light-hearted turn as Danis and the hosts discuss their love for wrestling and their favorite wrestlers. They reminisce about attending WWE events and meeting wrestlers like Rey Mysterio and Triple H. Danis expresses his admiration for Rey Mysterio and how he went out of his way to make him and his friends feel welcome. The conversation then shifts to Danis's experience with a famous porn star. He talks about how he met her through a mutual acquaintance and describes the encounter as one of the coolest things he has ever done. He mentions that she lived up to his expectations and that it was a surreal experience. Danis also addresses the controversy surrounding his comments about having 1,500 sexual partners. He explains that he is an entertainer and that people should not take his comments seriously. He emphasizes that he is focused on his career and training and that his personal life should not be a topic of discussion. Danis continues by talking about his fight with Logan Paul and the challenges he faces. He mentions that there is no upside for him in this fight, as he will face criticism whether he pulls out or goes through with it. He explains that if he pulls out, he will be seen as avoiding the fight, but if he goes through with it, he will be criticized by Logan Paul and others. Danis expresses his frustration with the situation and the lack of support for him in the public eye. The conversation then shifts to the lawsuit filed against Danis by Nina Agdal. Danis explains that the lawsuit is baseless and that he has done nothing wrong. He believes that Agdal is using the lawsuit as a way to gain attention and publicity. Danis expresses his disappointment with the situation and the negative impact it has had on his reputation. Danis also discusses his training with Conor McGregor and the influence McGregor has had on his career. He talks about the importance of having a mentor like McGregor and how it has helped him improve as a fighter. Danis praises McGregor's skills and work ethic, and credits him for his success in the sport. The topic of personal safety comes up, with Danis mentioning that he feels safer when he is around. He jokingly compares the feeling to being around a pedophile, causing some discomfort in the conversation. The hosts try to diffuse the tension and move on to other subjects. The discussion then turns to Danis' appearance and his resemblance to another person named Ariel. They joke about his nose and suggest that he should get a nose job. Danis gets defensive but eventually accepts the compliments about his appearance. The hosts express their admiration for Danis' talent and entertainment value. They discuss his role as a guest on the podcast and how he brings a unique energy to the show. They also mention that they would like to have him back as a guest in the future. Towards the end of the podcast, Danis reflects on the experience and expresses his gratitude for the opportunity to be on the show. He admits that he had a lot of fun and needed the lightheartedness of the conversation. He appreciates the support he receives from his fans and friends. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe.